Some lovely lady wrote in and was like, Mr. Jackson, sir, would you happen to already have a significant other? And if not, why not? Parentheses, I'm available. Thank you. Well, thank you for that lovely question, you lovely ladies. But do realize that this here Mr. Jackson don't have no money in this here economy and no position to speak of, because outside of this comedy routine that, oh, by the way, that coffee link, send this poor gentleman a coffee. I'm really shooting for becoming the president of the United States of America. And until that happens, I guess I'm not marriage material. So you can get in line, but it's not going to be one of those man-servant kind of relationships that are the norm out there. Like, oh man, relationships. Ooh, especially these days. See, my comedy routine. This is why I'm here, people. Those relationships. Oh. Uh-oh, people start laughing right away. They know what's coming. Man, I talk about them selling us cultural lemons, but those things, ooh, they say you can make lemonade out of those lemons, but those aren't lemons, are they? They're sort of some kind of Nerf balls that are painted yellow, and even when you try to squeeze them, nothing comes out. But they're very important. You need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. Go and get your little teacher grading you on everything you need to be doing. Dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Because having your own set of things you would rather be doing, that's it's not allowed. It's frowned upon. That's looked at with disdain and disgust. But of course it doesn't start off that way. I hope if some of you have had relationships as younger people in times that weren't as messed up as today, that you had a couple of nice experiences. Look, it's not all bad. It's just, why do relationships end up becoming that? What is it with the idea of modern relationships that make it like that revert to some type of chicken coopism? How? What? What's the sociology behind that? Because I can envision a time where maybe it's not like that. I mean, I could think of so many different things, but yeah, in other countries that aren't as uptight as this one at this point, there's polygamy. So you got a whole house. You got the hen house with the hens, and then you got some dude that is able to finance it, and as long as nobody's starving, they sort of put up with him, just like a one-on-one relationship kind of thing. But he might get more out of it. But he might not. He might get more aggravation out of it too. So you gotta watch what you wish for. But of course, the ladies that are just deeply enthralled and very passionately committed to talented Mr. Delaney Jackson, they're a whole different cut of cloth, aren't they? And so, of course, that would be a lot different. It would be heavenly just to even be in the presence of such a person. But look, we can't mix up business and show business, can we? So I guess it's just the type of woman I've bumped into, or how, again, these things develop that make them so difficult or end up becoming so unappealing on different levels, because it's sort of, there's a basic incompatibility between men and women on a psychological level, because they sort of have just completely different ways of thinking and being and doing and things of that nature. And if they think that they can determine the parameters of what makes a relationship functional, what a loving word that is, that usually don't work, do it. So what's the basic mistake? Well, I would say the basic mistake is looking for satisfaction there instead of internal satisfaction. Placing the locus of your satisfaction in externals instead of the internals. Because the physical body also gets older. So however fantastically beautiful Delaney Jackson's dance troupe is, 20 years later, okay, they still look fantastic. But 40 years, 50 years, 60 years later, how much sex appeal do people have when they're in their 80s and 90s and hundreds? I mean, we grow out of it eventually, don't we? At least some of us do. You know, venerable, respectable, otherworldly, heavenly kinds of people do. People like the Buddha did. People like St. Anthony and Meister Eckhart did. Who else? Lots of other people. So is that bad? Is that wrong? Should that be frowned upon? Is it okay when ladies do their own thing and don't have to disrespect men either? Don't have to undermine them or attack them or blame them for something that is lacking in their own lives or their own existence? Can they do that? I'm sure they can. I know they can. Some of them can. Some of them have. And some of them will. But what do people get out of relationships? I think socially, at least from a social standpoint, and again, we're already saying that the society is really not there for the satisfaction of the individual. Socially, a union should produce happy and healthy and well-adjusted children. And as many of them as, I won't say possible, but there should be as many as is reasonable. But what is that word reasonable? Why are people not having kids? Well, it's been made unreasonable. They don't really have the parameters, either socially or interpersonally, that would make them more prolific. But can that change? Yes, it can. Of course it can. We can change the way we think about the relationships. We can change how men and women think they should be interacting with each other. And we can change how children are raised and how they interact with their fathers and how they interact with other fathers and what women are doing and what they're not doing. All those things are variables. High civilizations get them right, and civilizations go on the downward trend, get them wrong. And so we're sort of in an in-between state. But there's a lot of room for an improvement, and I think younger women always have the potential of getting good advice and being, let's say, open to new ideas that are better. But at the same time, many of them are open to bad ideas that are worse, and many of them don't know the difference. So in this time, it's been very tragic, such as the free golf-a-thons have shown us. And the results are tragic, and it was all very avoidable. But on the other hand, I'm waiting for my commission to start working on new forms of relationships and religiosity and all of those things that will lead to an explosion of prosperity in Western zones. But at this time, I think there's still political blockages and hybrid operators that would keep that from happening. But maybe one day, maybe somewhere, maybe in 10 years' time, things can change. Maybe in 10 days, everyone will wake up from this bad feminist dream or nightmare, and then women can start getting back to having kids again. The good kids, right? The right kind of kids. And then under the right kinds of conditions, in the right kinds of communities, in the right kinds of economies, in the right kinds of cultural conditions that will lead to all of these terrible things that we've seen develop go away. But that means, ladies, stay flexible, right? And don't get too caught up on whatever ideological claptrap you've been shot full of. You might want to let that go. And get back to basics like BMI and the bowing practice and no self, and also veneration of ancestors. If not because you think you need a reason, just because you don't need a reason, just like the Japanese seem to be able to do without having to need a reason. Because it's good karma. That's all. You don't do it, bad karma. Your parents might be pushovers, right? Really stupid and misguided people, but your great-great-grandparents, they're still in a chain of causality connected to you. And if they don't approve of you, your behavior, your dumb ideas, your bad deeds, Japanese know that that's very bad karma. And that's why they take it into consideration. But Westerners think, oh, we're all just individuals. We're disconnected from this chain of causality physically, so it doesn't matter because we're materialists and secularists and other kind of weird, somewhat barbaric kinds of thinkers, so it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. And the people who have made that mistake, they've made very grave universal mistakes. And so get back to basics. And also, as far as telling men or what to do, that's not really natural. It's not the way Western civilization started off, and it's not the way it's going to end. But listening more, right, and refraining from doing bad things to your body and mind, that's always a good idea. But of course, who are you listening to? You're going to have to stop listening to sociological miscreants and start listening to the inner voice. If you have a problem with men, start listening to Artemis. Okay, but not overdoing it. Start listening to Mary Magdalene. and start listening to the Buddha, who said that no self is the way to go, and not a big self, a big bossy self, because that's the wrong way to go. And guess what happens, ladies? This is automatic. It's not a moral pronouncement. If you don't do it, like, just consider the Buddha, he's not a religious guy. He's a genius and a practical philosopher, and that's why he said don't do these things or develop no self, not because he was trying to be a difficult person. He was trying to convey the message so that other people would benefit from his insight. He realized that it was absolutely massively counterintuitive, and that's why he taught it. So to neglect these types of things and say, oh, well, I don't need that, it's crazy, well, that's bad karma. That means bad results. And bad results are their own non-reward, aren't they? I didn't go shopping in time, and now I have nothing to eat, and now I'm hungry, and there you go. Bad karma on a small scale. Bad planning led to bad preparations, led to bad conditions, which leads to, there we go, eureka, it's suffering, it's dissatisfaction. It's exactly what you didn't want, but this is the situation. Nothing to eat. The stomach, it's growling. Where is something to eat now? Now it's difficult. Imagine there's nothing to eat all around you. You're going to starve to death. You see how it can cascade? Just a little list of dumbest of mistakes. So now just imagine that ancestrally we might be related. It could be 100 generations ago. Do you think I want something bad for you? I don't. But if you don't take practice and the teachings of wise teachers seriously, you're going to have bad results, and it's going to be automatic. And it has nothing to do with moralizing, patriarchy. That's a code word, by the way, that you're in the vicinity of a lunatic. Anybody uses that word, that there's a theory behind it. It's all wrong. Somebody uses it, that's it, they're done. No need to listen further. It's a debunked theory. It's an alternative history. It's an alternative reality. So that word, you hear it, that person's done, they're cooked, they're going to get what they deserve. And it's not good. So, but, yeah, where's the comedy? Well, I could just go into how dissatisfying modern relationships are, but how funny is that? How to make that funny? That's a challenge. That's a challenge. They already say that they could place an ad looking for manservant with no balls that likes to shop and has no masculinity or own ideas, willing to put up with anything, including polyamory. There you go. Warning, ladies. Whoop, whoop, whoop. That word has been debunked too. That's a red flag. Any woman that uses that, that's a red flag, that word. And see, 3 red flags, men should not even consider you for anything, really. So you use patriarchy, then polyamory, 2 red flags, just like that. What else could you use? There's a bunch of other little sociological bomb words that are in circulation. Like, I don't know, anything related to politics, for example. And then, there you go, out of the running. You're not normal material, you're you get put in the defective line, the torpedo box. And why? Because good people need to protect themselves from harmful ideologies. And if you're a conduit of it, you're a believer, spelled Buhliever. Yeah, you're sort of a detriment to civil society, whether you want to believe it or not, whether your sisters want that to be true or not. Because they ain't your sisters and they ain't going to be around when you got nothing to eat. But if you got some Doritos, they'll take those too. Just like they took away your what people would have thought to be common sense just 20 years ago. So yeah, think a little bit more long term than that, and don't get caught up on that. And don't go through the gauntlet of any type of online nonsense, because that's really dangerous and bad for you. But what's not bad for you, that's practice. That's very good for you. And old Delaney, he just wants the best for you. So do remember that. But certainly if you ladies bother me with your pleadings and other things, you might force old Delaney to develop a Taoist module on top of all the other modules. But I'd say that module is optional and good practice. Look, there's good spiritual practice, then there's good social and good civilizational practice, and there can be maybe one module where that those forces come together. But I got other modules I'm working on right now. Cause this boat is taking on water. You hear me? I got my little tin cup, and I'm bailing out, and I don't got much time for that right now. But I will keep you in mind. Keep doing those bows. Keep working on that practice. Maybe one day that old module will come out, and then the sparks will fly. But right now, I need that insulation from that way of the world, because becoming as famous as I've become, there is a certain amount of social decorum that one must abide by, even if it is by necessity. But I'll keep you all in mind. First of all, say thank you to all of the gods and archetypes, of course, on the first line, on the 0 line of this dimension. Do give them all consideration and the respect that they deserve. As venerable teachers, that's what they're meant to be. Nothing more or less than that. So give a bow to the 4 celestial directions in appreciation of my appreciation for their infinite gratitude and generosities that I have experienced in this dimension. First and foremost of which, of course, is Dhamma, is practice. Because how can one be moral if one does not strip everything away and return with a spirit of humility to the task? Up to and including the experience of mixed karma in the humanly dimension, which is inevitable and yet not decisive. This is the marvelous part of this module, is the possibility at every moment, every mind moment, to achieve repentance. In this dimension, so that you have it for the dimensions to come. Do you see this rationality? Do you see how splendid and divine this law is called karma? It's only bad if you're getting it wrong, but you can change your trajectory. You can pull up and come to a peaceful glide and landing in a good place that may not be perfect, because no place is perfect, but allows you the opportunity to improve your spirit and mind to the point that you have prepared yourself for parinibbana, or perhaps put yourself in a state of mind, because of your skills, to be able to say that realistically. This is not some type of gimmick. This is not some type of false promise. Which is why it was so esteemed by the best people this planet has ever produced. And their lives are documented. One after the other, after the next, the more you know. What a good influence it's had on the world. Just such a good, at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, kind of good influence, healthy influence, moral influence, sustainable influence, realistic influence, achievable influence, to be redeemed even from a wayward life or a wayward way of thinking. How good is that, dear friends? How marvelous, how precious, what a treasure that is. Is that the jewel, the self-fulfilling, the mind-directed, gift-giving jewel of the mind that is achievable? Should we put the 3 poisons behind us, greed, ill will, and delusion? Can we have that power of liberation in our lives that will burn all attachments to things that cause suffering? Especially of the unnecessary kind, not the necessary kind. We know necessary suffering exists because we are human. How could this not be? During the birthing process, go look. Does it look nice to you? Are people in pain? But what comes of it? A good thing. Hopefully, a good person with good practice. Not because they are born that way, but because they practice. Why does a gymnast of the soul have muscles that don't appear to be muscles, but are very strong, and they can do miraculous things with that, such as letting go of attachments that are causing unnecessary suffering, whether they be addictions, or grudges, or hang-ups, or predilections, or worldviews, or just any old thing, any old, oh, I want this week. You ever have that? Like, I want this type of cowboy hat, but then you don't get it, and you're disappointed, but it's only for like a weekend, and then you never think about getting a certain type of cowboy hat again, but you might come back to it, but it sort of obsessed you for a fraction of a time that now seems ridiculous, and obviously was, because I love using ridiculous examples, because our lives are ridiculous. but also not ridiculous. Why do you think it's ridiculous? Is it a sense of self-importance? Would that be self? Well, it's not ridiculous. No moment, my moment, no experience, no matter how base or derailing or demeaning it might be, all of those things are meaningful for us karmically. How could it not be? That's the whole significance of karma, the importance of it. Do not do bad things and do not receive the bad consequences of that. That is essentially it. It's so simple. Now, people will come and say this is unrealistic. You can't do this and survive, but they're thinking in a strange way. It's about doing it in your personal life. It's not about some kind of social thing which we cannot control, because those are dependent on changing forms and conditions, which may or may not be favorable, may or may not be good. House burns down, bad. House rebuilt, great. But what phase are you in? Are you in the burning down phase, or the stupidity that led up to that phase, or are you in the living in the new house under civilized conditions with Kalyana Mitta all around the world, because they understand this universal principle that is so appealing, not because it's mystical, but because it has so much direct value for the practitioners that they would call it priceless, and it is. Because in many cases you cannot get to the satisfaction under, in many cases, absolutely legitimate forms of suffering and blockages that humans can normally develop over the course of their lifetimes based on different factors, which we will just call variables, to depersonalize them. I was skiing at such a high rate of speed at one point, and the climatic conditions and apparently my conceit or overestimation of my abilities, which had been pretty good up until that point. Some people would have said Olympic level. But I don't get into competitions of this nature because that's egoic capture. It's not about external validation. It's about the lesson learned that skiing too fast is very dangerous and not very advisable. That's it. No matter what your skill level is, you're looking for trouble under unfavorable conditions that you have created yourself for taking an aggressive path that has no real upside except for exhilaration, that has a bit of conceit in it. And finally, the causality of it, of such a foolishness, could lead to serious lifelong injuries like slamming against a rock or a tree at a tremendous rate of speed at unfavorable geometries, because at sometimes, some points you're getting up over 50 miles per hour or something like that. So the chances of something going wrong are very high. And what is the point of doing that again? To that level of extremity? Now look, I'm not trying to kill the sport. I'm just saying, in my particular instance, this was my thinking. In the Buddhist way of thinking, he almost drowned in a small stream that even a child could have crossed with no difficulties. But he's a grown man that is engaging in a practice that has weakened him to the point that he could essentially drown face down in a puddle. Because, eating 1 grain of rice for 90 days or something in the jungle, it's not an advisable kind of procedure. I don't think there's a doctor on the planet that would say that that would be the right thing to do under those conditions, unless one was suffering from some kind of delusion, which he was. But he had to realize that himself. And look at the violence that it took. Passive violence of neglect or punishment, self-punishment, unnecessary suffering, blaming, something like that. Where you can say, look, I have been driven to this point via delusion to a premature end under unfavorable circumstances for no reason other than I seem to see things this way and that way, and not being grateful for the fortunate birth of being a human being amongst, I must say also, at least as far as the Kalyana Minta are concerned, the most accomplished people that this planet has ever witnessed ever, and just don't know it yet. Gentlemen, I have seen hell, and one of its names is stupidity. And what does it matter, the stupidity of others, if we ourselves are in some way stupid on some matters, but we only find out about it later, and then we have a tendency to blame ourselves for that when we should let that go. Wasn't all that important anyway. All things considered. I mean, things are blowing up at this moment, like whole buildings, boom. So maybe your problems aren't that big. If that happened around you, what would be the bigger problem? So it's happening somewhere. So give yourself that comparison sometimes. See, that gives you the window into no self, because the only thing that's making your problems important is you, or some version of you that you don't need, that is causing unnecessary suffering for you, because you're seeing things this way and that way and not the enlightened way, which is to let it go. How big is it? That's what some people say. That's like a footstep in the right direction. Continue along that direction. It's not big at all. It's just you making a big deal out of something that might not be a big deal. In fact, even big deals aren't big deals, because we all die. So the Buddha thought of death every breath he took in. Ananda only 7 times a day. How many times have you thought about death? Because you should. Not just your own death, but the death of loved ones close to you, perhaps even enemies, that have been so enlightening, so thrilling, so inspiring, so deceptive, so misguided, and yet it's through the interaction of different causal forces that are precisely the dynamic that leads to each individual experience that can or cannot be guided towards the light of enlightenment. And when I say parinibbana, if your minds do not lift up higher out of your lives to then see the bigger picture, how blessed you are to have been born into a human existence. It's very favorable. And for that, you should bless and thank your ancestors with every breath as well, especially for their sufferings that they absolutely did not only experience and endure, but they overcame, they excelled, they improved the practice. So that even the person that they said was impossible, it was impossible that they could let that go. That person came back and said, no, actually I did let it go, and that's why. And that's why I say thank you to all of the true Kalyanamitta of this dimension, whether one has them physically in a common, normal, vulgar way, or their presence amongst us as an unshakable inspiration for all that is possible within the noble hearts and minds of noble men and women at any given moment in time. Thank you. Training, the idea of training, this is a very good idea. Everything is training. So you want to do something, you have a good idea, you move towards that directionality. Realize that it's probably going to first be a prototype that you're going to mess up on, and then it's only going to be the second or third model that's worth anything. And not to get too stuck up on results in the beginning. That's it. Just push through. Do some experimentation. Don't get egoically caught up on results. See, no self, how wonderful that is, that process. But see, a lot of people, they get caught up on just anything, but they shouldn't just get caught up on anything, and that's where nothingness comes in. It's a disconnect. You're in neutral, you have a motor, you have a car, you have this wonderful human dimension that is so fortunate. What do you do now? You can stay parked. There's a lot to do wherever you are. You just haven't noticed because you were driving around. That's the difference between a normal viewpoint and a super human viewpoint, a super normal viewpoint. It's not anything special. It's all around us, but people don't seem to see it because they have a normal point of view and they're not able to put themselves in neutral and then decide where's the best place to go or not with their minds alone. You don't need to put the body into that. That's the second part of the process. Stay with the mind. Don't go to bad places with your mind. If you find yourself going that way, disengage the accelerator, disengage the clutch, maybe bring the car to a stop and turn it off and walk out, and don't go any further in a bad direction. That's bad karma. You take a tractor, you take it in a wrong direction and you keep driving. Look at all of that destruction. You see it every day, maybe in your own family, even in your own life right now. You're the unskillful tractor driver. Just ran through the neighbor's fence, just crushed all of the vegetables, just almost hit a car on the highway, just crashed into a tree. The machine is destroyed. Grandfather's machine. His proudest investment ever that he maintained with meticulous attention to detail, with parts that are priceless. They cannot be replaced. They should be in a museum. And yet, look, you can see this as a funny story as a bystander. Oh, what an idiot. Drove his grandfather's tractor into a tree. So you can do this to your own problems. You can do it in a book, or you can apply it to your specific variables, and then you'll see it as amusingly as normal people don't. Because they're trapped in a narrative that is just torturing them from day to day. And yet that's unnecessary suffering. And with this method, they can stop it completely for the rest of their lives. If they commit themselves sincerely to the practice, they will get sincere results. That's how it works. How much do you think that's worth? not getting on that tractor and taking that left-hand turn in the first place, and maybe getting off before even all of that havoc started, because you don't need any trouble and you follow the 5 precepts, and then you even add precepts on top. Just to be, it's like increasing your insurance policy. At some point, you're very, very, very secure in good results, even if nothing is happening, because you have invested so wisely in the venerable traditions of your most esteemed, venerable ancestors that were so amazing that even the gods came to experience them just for a brief time, because they were so spectacularly amazing. So if you have to put on the brakes, it's not a bad thing. Slowing down to 0, it's a very good thing. Lots of times, 99% of the time, that's the right choice, especially if you're driving haphazardly through life and you have caused yourself and others so much suffering. Even oceanic levels of it. That if you were just to recognize that in one mind moment, you could stop it too. That's the power of this practice. Some call it the diamond vehicle. Someone wrote in, teacher, tell us about Dana. Thank you. Well, picture in your mind the most perfect of yellow lotuses. And then extend that into infinity. That is Dana. And so the next time you smell the sweetest of perfumes, that is Dana. Most likely you did not pay for it. It was given to you, but you did not need to take it either. That is Dana. And this miraculous practice that so many practitioners swear by, especially their great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, they lived and died by, and thereby provided the bridge to you right here, right now, to hear this message. And take up the practice, even in its most smallest forms, such as awareness, the first step out of ignorance, that blinding light in retrospect, that was just like a flash of lightning on a mountain peak in a snowstorm. Isa. Calling forth all of the good things of the universe. Joyous direction, despite all worldly circumstances, especially the most difficult ones, because that's where it was born. This sword, flaming sword of the Spirit, that can cut through all matters, again and again and again and again. The precious liberator of the mind, ever so sharp, ever so impenetrable, that nothing in this dimension can withstand it. Cut getting to the core, to the fundamental essence of what it means to be human and superhuman. Above normal class, first class, despite the circumstances, without paying for a ticket. Just Donna. So that even if this message finds you poor fools in strange circumstances thousands of years from now, that it may reach you and show you the way. The path of liberation and gratitude and joy. That the most venerable of venerables, the Buddha, has left us. His footprints pressed upon the earth, once there, once gone. Tathagata. Getting to some place good repetitively is good, if you can do that. But the first prototypes, remember, they're not going to be perfect, so go into it with playful experimentation. Sort of an appreciation for just giving it a whirl with some tools that give you a good chance of succeeding. By doing perhaps a little research first, but not getting lost in the research. Just a little bit to get you past whatever blockage you might have. And then a whole lot of playful experimentation. Again, with the right tools, like a couple of tools. Just little tools that work for you kind of tools. They might be inspirational tools. You don't use them like a hammer. Don't go around in a room clopping on the walls or things like that. Maybe it's a pen, but it's a pen that has very special features, like the design is very well, like it can get wet and then dry and hot and cold, and it works every time, and it's sort of unbreakable because the design is really good and reliable. And it's just one of those things, because the design was so good, that you value it a little bit more than normal things, and then you have it with you. You make sure it's in your front pocket that has a button on it, and you button that pocket. So that even if that garment were to be blown away in the wind, you'd probably be able to recover it, and it would still be in the pocket, kind of thing. And that's happened on multiple different occasions, but you never lost the thing because you took care of the thing, and the thing took care of you. And takes care of you every time you just pull it out and sign a contract that might be an agreement for some important matter or another, and it does mean something that you're in a position to sign with such elegance with such a tool, because that might just be the one tool you have with you all the time. Just because it's eccentric, it means something to you. It has sort of an Ansus kind of aura about it that has its connection to world literature, perhaps, and other connections that you can make roots in the thing that matters because you made it matter. You matter if you make it matter, but everything need not matter, especially any of the mind poisons. That's what anti-venom, antidotes, mental hygiene is all about. By being able to depersonalize your personal variables that you are attached to that might be causing one mind poison or another, there's several different kinds. You might be suffering from several different kinds or just one kind. It's just as effective. And it's just as depersonal because these things can be depersonalized because there's only a persona that's personalizing it that we can dispense with too. And rather come back as the forgiving person that forgot about it too. See, forgiving sounds so weak, but it's very strong in many cases. It's very weak not to forgive because you're still suffering. That's the whole point. These counterintuitive mysteries that keep so many people in chains of unnecessary suffering. That's how big this thing is. That's how important and medicinal this type of teaching is. Because it cures those ailments of the mind. And it has nothing to do with your particular instance. Think of all the people who lived and all that they may have suffered. And they too had the possibility to depersonalize it. And let's just hope to God that they were able to do more than the normal, and perhaps even super normal, as far as letting things go that aggravate you or aggravated you in the past, even if it was just one mind moment ago, and picking up a new life of good practice that is consistent, wholesome, resilient, and automatic, because that's how you make it real. Did you hate me yesterday? Did you hate some word that I said yesterday? Well, you need not hate me now. Those words just exist in your mind, and your way of seeing them and feeling those words, perhaps it set off multiple explosions in your mind, like grenades or booby traps. But if it needed to blast that away or blast you up that way, then that's just what needed to be. But today is a new day. This is a new minute. This is a new second. And on with the breath. Boo, do. That's all you need to know. Try it for a while. Just let your mind spin out everything and then come back incrementally to those things that do matter most, like your own sense of sanity, like a regime of self-care. When was the last time you showered, right? When was the last time you looked at your hands, perhaps did some medical procedures like clean out a cut or cut your nails, or just take 5 minutes there? You're running yourself ragged, most likely. That kind of practice, right here, right now. Now look, in the beginning, it's going to be maybe just 1 minute in between things, but that's very good practice anyway, because it breaks things up on a small level. And later, just like when you're breaking a big boulder up into little boulders, those little cracks, they can be useful, even if it takes years to do it. By creating those little cracks, you're making it easier for yourself later on. And it does become easier. Sometimes it comes off in big chunks later. And it's very nice feeling of relief, especially if it's been encrusted on and in you. Perhaps even from childhood or from previous lives. Does that sound promising to you? If not, it should. It is not the jewel of the mind, it is the diadem of the turban. oh no, oh no, but that man who talks of such riches, he is trying to steal from me my crown, away from me, such a giver of such precious gift. Who would say that? Who is wearing such a thing in such a miraculous way and conveying such overwhelming beauty, that that man would be a brigand, an undesirable ruffian, unwelcome in good company? What taste would that be? Don't be envious, my dear, dear, dear brothers and sisters, of my crown. But find and fashion and put your own crown on your own head and be free. I give you permission not just to be free of suffering, but to find joy in this dimension and thanks and meaning. And for those of us that may have had one misfortune too many or another, realize until your last breath comes, the curtains have not fallen. That you are redeemable, and yet it is you that need to redeem yourself. No other living creature can do that but you. You don't have to be worth something to start that process with that insight. That's what makes worthiness manifest in this dimension. May these words resound within you, and wherever bells ring across the rolling sea. Just as the teachings of Bodhidharma can return to one when a wind blows in a certain direction, so you can pick up a stick and turn it over and over and over. One you found, not first one. Maybe not second one. You're not really looking for a stick. But maybe some stick will come that's suitable. Maybe today, maybe in 3 days. Maybe you didn't even know you were looking for it until you found it. And then you picked it up. And with a little playful experimentation, doing, not saying, not reading, doing, deepening the root of doing and being, we can fly much too fast over these spectacular concepts and lose them because they are so compact. But the hard-hittingness of it is the repetition, the returning of the mind to the good things, avoiding the bad things. Just like bad people, avoid the bad people. Avoid the bad thoughts. And the two go together. But when there's no bad people and there's just bad thoughts, that's still a bad situation. And there's no one to blame. Because skill means sorting your mind like little pebbles. This color goes here, this color goes here, this size goes here, this size goes there, and arranging into a whole with deep understanding of the kami that are as small as the smallest thing and as big as the biggest thing. And that these are natural forces, universal forces, outside of our control, but also under our control. Be thorough in what you do. Talking is talking. Thinking is thinking. Reading is reading. That is all a kind of doing, but it's not doing. How about not doing, not doing? So easy to read. Oh, this isn't a new idea. I'm on to the next thing. Stop right there. You have not understood it. And you don't understand it by doing other things. You deepen it. You see birds flying? There, look, they're flying all over. But where do they land and why? And is it a good place or a bad place? Or were they thinking or not thinking? All animals have a kami. The longer you watch them, the more insight you gain. But man is also a spectacular animal. They can pick and choose. Yes, we are often forced. This is the problem with sociology. We are often forced to do things we don't want to do, but we can also see that as practice. Because the practice knows all about that process, doesn't it? In fact, it's built on it. That is the practice. I don't want this. Oh, that's aversion. How do you get rid of aversion? Yeah, see? Theory and practice. Practice makes perfect. But you only get there by practicing. It's not reading. It's not learning new things about all of these other fascinating things, these wonderful things that do and did exist because you curate your mind that way. Playful curiosity, like picking up a stick in your hand. And then admiring all of its imperfections, all of its wheel of karma that it embodies in its form because it lived most likely, if it's a tree or a branch, many, many years. And perhaps floated on the seas, pulled out by the storms, and then placed at your feet. And so you pick it up by chance. And there's a few things that might not suit you for your purposes if you're going to use it for a walking stick. And so you shave those off carefully, but not everything. Shaving things off. Shaving words off. Shaving sentences off. Shaving pages off. Shaving books off. Shaving routines off. Shaving thinking time and aggravation off. Shaving wasting time off. Shaving compulsion off. Shaving this and that thinking. Shaving the past and the future off until you get to the fine state of the present with all of your capabilities at your disposal, because you have an infinity of nothingness that you cultivate too, which is a superhuman power. It's not normal. Many people don't have it. Most people don't. But if you cultivate it and get it, just like a special type of plant, you're a botanist, or you deal with things like bonsai, then you know what cultivation is about. And the results you put in, if you put in good causality, you get good causality out. We need to shift our focus to that awe-inspiringly great principle and deepen that. Yes, there is chaos. Yes, there is suffering. Yes, there is aggravation. Oh, of course, don't ever look away from that when it's there. But deal with that skillfully and not unnecessarily. The human being that cries at tragedy is a human being. And so if it is the right time to cry, then one should cry and even experiment with it. Knock yourself out with it. If it takes you 3 days, it takes you 3 days. If it takes you 30 days, it takes you 30 days. That's what the wild woman in the suttas taught the Buddha and everyone else. It took her that long until she decided to end her unnecessary suffering. But it did take her that long, and that suffering, it was so real. It was more than real. It was delusional. See, now, if you were personally invested in her story, that hits you like a slap in the face, and that hurts too. Why? Because you have self, you have ego. That's why we have no self. And that hit does not hit you at all. It's an extra wind of fresh air into nothingness that vivifies it, that makes it so captivating, so alive, so present, so aware, so in the here and now under favorable conditions, because you have cultivated nothingness, which is a superhuman insight and skill. And because of your good deeds, the result will be good thoughts and good behavior, careful behavior, concerned behavior with things that bring so much more back in terms of real value that is not considered value by materialists, who the Buddha soundly defeated, thrashed them on a philosophical level, which is the Pali Canon has recorded. Thrashes them. Like, just imagine, again, some type of MMA guy versus just a normal person, essentially, or even a below normal person. It's a complete slaughter. It's like going from one side to the other, knockout punches left to right. So when you have skills like that and you depersonalize things, you're in a very good state of a centeredness. Just imagine a perfectly placed atom swimming in an electronic cathedral of flexibility and order. And that you are there and you will just react as appropriately as one can to the circumstances at hand, but not any other circumstances. And people can come together and people can move apart. And people can do it nicely coming together and they can do it nicely going apart. When people don't have attachments, then they do the right thing for each other, including not hindering other people on their upward path. We know how common and normal it is for people to see someone shooting to the stars and they cut them down. They say, no, you're not good enough to be free. You don't deserve it. You didn't do enough. Somebody didn't grant you permission. But it's your own responsibility and it's your own highest duty and calling to have that concern and care for yourself. Having been born into such favorable circumstances. And if you think it's unfavorable, stop thinking of that. Think of the favorable things. I'm sure you will be rewarded for that. Because we've already had billions of people that attest that this life is a fortunate birth. Because it is human. Even if it is filled with suffering at times. Especially of the unnecessary kind. Which is why this practice is to be a friend of human beings and compassionate. But for yourself first. Because that's where it begins. You cannot be floating in the air and have a bad relationship with your own humanity as well as its failings, such as being delusional, the three realms. That's what Bodhidharma preached. Three realms are hell. Greed, anger, and delusion. That's what he said. How it does desire, anger, want, anger, and delusion. Is that closer to true for you? You see how the word gets more compact? The idea becomes more real because it's deepening that idea. Oh wait, he's right. If I didn't want that thing that I want, then there's really no reason I want it. Like for example, to live forever, people have all different types of ideas about life. I wanted the yellow car, not the red car. Happens all the time with unskillful people. This is what it is to be a human being, but we don't have to be that way if we are skillful. We learn the skill and practice it, see? What if I was playing the piano the other day and it was so musical? It was just so filled with so many different nuances. The percussion was so different, the air was different. The wind was blowing and the wind carried the notes in a certain way, which led to a transformation at a certain time in your life where you were finally receptive to that instead of other noise that may or may not be self-generated or socially generated, because we have to deal with people who are normal and unskillful, and yet we have the option of being compassionate with no self, but not stupidly so, naively or delusionally so, realistically so, respectfully so, such as dignity, civility, and respect dictate, because that is also skillful. Respectful towards others, then if they are not respectful back to you, does that affect you? They're just not on your level. They're normal, common, vulgar people. Born out of a hole, pushed out, fed, clothed, more or less. There they are, they don't know what to do. They're trying to avoid suffering. But many of them are failing miserably. They are being consumed by the kilesas, the poisons of the mind, in the three realms. If you take a dog and put it into a kennel and it has sticks that rotate and hit it, and the floor is electrified, you can see it's not the dog's problem. But that dog has put himself there, if it's a human. But that human is not bad. Fundamentally, it's just humans have bad habits, and those habits make them bad people. And that being bad people, they create bad results. A cascading, let's say, bad thing instead of a cascading good thing. That's the other side. See, I like to change the pessimism. Look at the potential here, people, for spreading good karma, good effects, good teachings, good feelings throughout the world, and how to do that most effectively in your mind first, but then later. Well, it's just a natural extension. But if it doesn't grow to be that big that people can see you from outer space as some type of exceptional, marvelous creation, that is fine too. It's all about scale, and relative to scale at whatever point in growth you are. Every seedling in the forest is also invisible for a long time. This is the ugly tree. Somebody walks by and says this. But 200, 300 years later, the storms that come and go, and different infestations, or who knows what, even human dynamics, the ugly tree turned into the monumental one, just imperceptibly, and not really regarding the other things around it, changing forms and conditions. Perhaps some things it could consider to have been favorable and others not, but ultimately it was its fate to live that way at that place with those results, independent of the catastrophic disdain and vulgarity that one may have grown up in, or the conditions in which one first started out, before one started to take active measures. Oftentimes without knowing why. Just doing. That's mostly how normal people try to have a bit of self-care for themselves. They notice they are tired, they go to sleep, if they are smart. If not, look, self-harm. Doing too much, not getting enough sleep, you're harming yourself and you're endangering others. This guy, he fell asleep the other day, whole factory blew up. See the scale of karma? Can go like that real easy. One person not caring about themselves enough. Especially if they're different. Perhaps they're highly sensitive. They have different things that should be there for them, like peace and quiet, and they don't have it because there's craziness around them all the time. This is the dog in the kennel we talked about. And there are people out there, they are absolutely insane, crazy. It drives them crazy. Dogs barking. I hear this whole kennel, I think it was in a dream. Call it the dog kennel, dream. And as I walked away, I could still hear the barking. So it's not a dream, it's a reality. And just like with dogs that are already driven crazy, how do you bring them back? Most times they just shoot them. if they have to, because they're dangerous. They can kill little kids. They run out free. Dead kids. The dog didn't. The dog was in a state of hell. It was still being attacked, so it had to attack back. Already lost its focus. What is it attacking? It's not even thinking about that at all. No mind. But no mind and bad karma. You see, that is the worst of unskillfulness, is it not? So that is also why the precepts are skillful and morality in general is skillful, so as well as dignity, civility, and respect. Now, civility, I like the word politeness. Good manners. Good manners means coming down to a normal level if you want to convey to people normalcy, because that's what is appropriate, and not to show that one is perhaps, the highest living aristocrat that has ever been born in this dimension. Because you see, it conveys the wrong message at the wrong time to the wrong people. And this is the human dimension, and this is not heaven. And so, why can't you be normal to normal people, but not let them necessarily define you either? You can come down to their level, address them on that level, and then go back up to your level if they are not there. And that's just a very practical way of dealing with things also that are depersonalized, because it really doesn't matter what face or symmetry was behind what. You could just change the look of someone, changing forms and dimensions, and have them say their lines like a hate-filled screed against your entire civilization for years on end. Something like that. Or you could just ignore it. Like, oh, is that a weed whacker I hear? I guess I'll just ignore it. Has no real relevance to anything, except that those people must be in hell, because that's what people in hell say. And that's how they act too. Because greed or avarice or wanting, right, is one of the three hell realms. It's a kalisa of the mind. It drives people crazy. Crackers. In real life, in everyday normalcy. Oh, I'm normal. What are you doing again? Oh, I'm attacking Western civilization. Oh, what? That's what you came up with? For what reason? Oh, kalesas. Oh, and that's going to create hell on earth. Didn't you know that? Oh, that part? No, I don't believe that part. See, delusion. Now, I'm using a intentionally exaggerated example here, although I wouldn't call it exaggerated at this time, or at least the times I lived through. But we don't get necessarily what we want in this world, including admiration for good things. Or things we think are good, but other people might think they're bad. Like people in the three realms, they think what good people do, like have boundaries, that's bad. You have a front door, you have a lock on it, they think they should just come in and do whatever they want. Now, not all people think this way, but subnormal people do. They call them criminals or crazy people, right? That's why the prisons are filled with them. But you don't see them, so you think it's normal. But no, super normal means being very careful and very respectful and very polite where applicable, but not in all instances. setting boundaries is important for civility. And there's a lot of preconditions to that are vulgar, especially when dealing with vulgar people. Person wants to come in, well, that's why you have a lock. See, it's not so dramatic. Now, if they try to break the lock, then you have something else, right? And then maybe it's just calling someone on the phone, like, I can't believe this, but someone is not respecting a valid boundary. And then someone comes real quick, and then the situation is hopefully resolved in a civilized way. But how does that look like? Well, it could look like that the person trying to do the uncivil thing is stopped. That's the civilized response. But if you don't have a civilized response, like no response, then barbarity grows. Bad causality grows. But, of course, it's not the end. If people can recover. You can go through a bout of depression, for example, and you can come out of it. That's really the skillful thing to do, isn't it? You can be doing this and that kind of harmful behavior, and then you can slowly stop doing that, day by day, because you've depersonalized whatever attachments were keeping you that way. But of course we're human, just like those dogs that may have been conditioned extremely. Maybe you haven't been conditioned that far, but some gray zone of that is in play. Otherwise you would not be suffering unnecessarily. And that includes all of neuroses, whatever that might be, which is a substantial part of people's problems, like hypochondriacs. They're not sick, but they think they are. That's a problem of delusion, isn't it? It's a misperception. This can cure them. Medicine can't, see? That's what the practice does. The thought arises, you drop that thought. In many ways, these are the demonic forces, if you want to look at it as sub-processes, which I like to do because then it's something you can get a grasp on instead of thinking it's impossible. Okay, this process shot up. I don't know why. I didn't build a computer, but I do see it's happening. What do? I reboot, close the window, reboot the computer, right? Boo-do. I take a deep breath. Breathe out deep. Take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 days, 20 hours, right? Whatever one can reasonably do, which really isn't a lot of doing, is it? It's a lot of stopping and rebooting, because there's no point wrestling with your computer when one of the three realms is in play. You see what I'm saying? Because what would the causality be? So these acts of spiritual hygiene, they are necessary, not just as maintenance, but as recalibration. You can be a very fine machine. You can be a very delicate machine. You can be a very robust machine. But if there's even a micrometer of miscalibration somewhere, everything that gets shot through that machine is going to be out of tolerance. And perhaps even trash, like unusable. So what did you do then? You put all this valuable material and time and electricity and friction and what have you into this object that is defective because it's not been recalibrated. So what do people do on the production line? Stop everything right now. Not one piece of metal will go into this thing that's moving around quick until the stuff coming out on the other end is absolutely 100% the way it should be or better. There's no point in running that thing under conditions when the machine is out of calibration. Your psychology is out of calibration. if you are engaging in unnecessary suffering. This human beings should be in a great mood. Feel great, look great, be great. That is the natural state of man in this heavenly realm. Ever been to the most beautiful place you've ever been? Think right now, what place was that? Go back to that place again and again. That's what we were put here on this earth to experience every day, every minute. But not in physical terms, in metaphysical terms. But it's understandable when you're being bombarded by off-putting things and those three realms. This place can be a hell, can it? How many people have you experienced that? I'm looking at a sea of people right now. No exceptions. But how do you manage it and get out of it, or get free of it, or dissolve it? That's the skillful question. All the other things, not so skillful. In fact, possibly even detrimental. A machine is running, things are coming out the wrong way. You need to stop and recalibrate. If you don't know how to go further, you at least know that continuing what you were doing made no sense. That you know. Don't forget that. Don't turn the machine on again until you have a grasp on how you could get the results, the good karma, the good dimensions, to move forward in a good way, even if it might be very slow. You might have to do some things by hand. You might have to engage in, and here we come full circle, to playful experimentation with the beginner's mind. I shall take my appreciation for Bhikkhu Bodhidharma into Parinibbana. As far as governments go, essentially they should not deliver below expectations, but the citizenry should not have crazy expectations. But those expectations that they do have, such as for dignity, civility, and respect, as well as civil liberties and a certain amount of security, at least within the country, or within the zone where people live, because then we get away from personalizing things. Then finally, the people that should be delivering for other people should not have their minds in one of the three realms, or all three realms at once. What is it that you want that's driving you to cause all these problems? Stop wanting that. Problem goes away. Everybody's happy. You can do this on a business level, you can do this in your relationships, and you can do this as a country or a nation. Stop wanting something that's causing you problems. On the other hand, if you are being mistreated, you really have to think, how are you being mistreated, and if there's a way that it can be resolved. And if it can't, well, then it's not to let the sadist just break into your door and mess up with your mind or your things all the time. But even if it's happened a couple of times, that's how you can think about like what you have and how you're living, and then you can change that. Perhaps in a way that is a win-win. And going away, avoiding foolishness is a win-win. The foolish factors don't get messed up, and the non-foolish factors don't get messed up. And the foolish factors have their karma and their destiny But at least in regards to the matters that involve you, there is a separation of ways. And so they are left to their own devices and doing their own things in their own way without mixed karma. But of course, it takes time to grow apart, and you don't need to grow together. That's another thing. And also skill. People get into relationships, they have the best of intentions and the best of assumptions. They find out the reality of the situation or the reality changes. They can move apart skillfully too. Still stay in touch, still be friendly, all of those things. They can do it in business, they can do it in their relationships. Same thing. Close. And good business, but don't get into business with just anybody. What are you talking about? The person that doesn't pay, you talk to two people, it's no point. He has a big order, he wants to order 10,000 things. No time. Next customer, right? It's like that. But also don't be greedy. How about some dana for the people that deserve it? Because bad luck can happen to all of us. The universe is not set in stone. That's why it makes this place so fascinating too. That such strange things happen for no good reason necessarily, other than this is the place where things get shaken up and you are tested. And if you use it as an opportunity and you improve because you gain insight, then you are on the right path. But if you just let it drive you crazy, you are on the wrong path. So be aware and get into the habit of raising awareness. Get in the habit of more solitariness. Get into the habit of solitude so that these things are not too difficult to do all at once, because it's nearly impossible to do that. That's what samadhi is all about. But many of you don't even get there. It's like, oh yeah, sure, I sit down, but I sit and I just keep getting more angry because I'm thinking about this thing. Yeah, that's not the way you do it. But okay, you're at least in the boxing ring. You're getting your lights knocked out of yourself. That's the way it is. And this is why the Buddha, he is revered, because nobody was telling him. He didn't have nobody really whispering in his ear. He was taking these hits as a freestylist. Just showed up one day, no clothes, kind of way. Live on 1 grain of rice for 30 days kind of way, type of champion. And the odds didn't look to be in his favor, but he boxed his way out. He boxed his way out of this bardo and all bardos. That is what has made him the ultimate champion. But you have advantages. You have this technique works, this does not, this is not so good, this is better. That is value. Have not even sent me one coffee yet. This is what people do. But it's not working for coffee. Right? This is real value, because when all other people are doing well, all living creatures, everything is great, gets better. That's good karma on a universal scale. Even the neighbor. Yes, the neighbor's doing good. Good. You don't want to hear no sad story. But when sad stories happen, if they can get through it the best way, it's an inspirational story and people can help. But over-helping or inappropriate helping is also not really helping. Ego helping. Oh, here, take a picture of me. Look, I have a shovel. I'm helping this guy out. But is he helping, or is he just trying to appear that way for other 3 realm reasons? So this is the problem. There is no shortcut to getting good results. You have to have good morality. And good morality gets good results, but not always. Not in material terms, but in metaphysical, spiritual terms, always. But cheaters think, oh, this is too hard. I can get the material stuff quick and fast, and I can just dispense with the morality. That's delusion. Simple. Easiest of mistakes. You find a wild dog in the jungle, that's the way that dog acts. This is the way these people act. Put the cake on the table, turn around, cake is gone. But see, then those dogs get gone. And then there's no cake or anything else, you see. Then they're back to living in that very normal, common, vulgar, perhaps even subnormal way. No access to those choice meats at certain lunar celebrations and other things because they've lost the association. They forgot how to act. They wanted that thing then, and they lost all of that goodness over a lifetime of a service and a fidelity to the people around oneself, which one might not have wanted. See, it's not about want. It's about practice. And it's about fate as well. Unavoidable confrontations beyond all understanding. And that's the way to think about it. Not my understanding, oh, me, mine, my. Oh, this happened. This is what it looked like, changing forms and conditions. No song. That type of transformative process, world, mind state, worldview, point of view, state of being, that's what you need when things hit you. That's the jester mind, the juggling of the things. I got knives, I got torches, I've got these striped and glittering balls, these jewels. Just changes like that. When you change your perspective. So do it. And remember, the page of goblets sees the fish without the water.